The biggest challenge, I think, was learning to ask for help. I didn't know how to ask, where do I get some cooking oil? I just boiled my vegetables. I would just make sure I'm all right with whatever is available around me. And at some point, I figured it's not worth not asking. Right? I remember I had a dictionary from English to German, translating it. And with my terrible accent, I would go and try to do that and signal to people, I need an umbrella, it's raining.
Welcome to another episode of YanaTV. Today we're going to be talking about what it means to build something from zero, especially in your career. And with us in the studio we have Kasturi Gomatham, who leads electric mobility business at Shell and mom to a toddler. Well, I'm very curious right now, when we say about building something from zero. So what is your story?
Building from zero is an amazing experience. First time you have it, and then you get used to it and want to do it again and again. Professionally, for me, it happened many times over, enough to understand that I really thrive in it. The first one was as a university grad. So I started my journey as a researcher at Daimler, working on Mercedes cars. So fascinating for a...
Very fascinating.
Very fascinating for a graduate, a chemical engineering graduate. I was transported, pun intended, to Germany, first year of my work from India. And as I was building there, it was a completely new space, right? It was research, so we did not know what the solutions of the problems were, but we had a beautiful vision in our heads. So the objective, my then boss that showed me was, you see, Kasturi, you see all the trucks and cars moving around us. As you look at them, as they pass by, all you see is smoke, black, thick smoke coming out of it. And our job is to make that black, thick smoke go away and convert them into water droplets. It has to be magical. So that was the vision. So that was my first 0 to 1 story in Germany. New to the country, did not know the language, was in a very German city, Stuttgart. And
not like Berlin, which is very international, for example.
Like Berlin, which is very international.
What do you feel was the biggest challenge at that time?
The biggest challenge, I think, was learning to ask for help. So I was such a quiet kid growing up, an absolute introvert, but I did not know any other world, right? So I would hesitate a lot to even go ask for bread, and I'm a vegetarian. So I struggled to even ask. A lot of times it was confused for vegan, right? So which means a very hard bread, which I did not know how to handle, right? So things like that, where you would end up with a completely different food that you wanted to actually buy. For a couple of months, I didn't know how to ask, where do I get some cooking oil, right? So I just boiled my vegetables. So I was so hesitant to go ask for help from people around me that I would just make sure I'm all right with whatever is available around me. That was the biggest learning I had in Germany, and being on my own right out of university. And at some point, I figured it's not worth not asking, right? So I started to meet people. I remember I had a dictionary from English to German, translating it. And with my terrible accent, I would go and try to do that and signal to people, I need an umbrella, it's raining. And I would look like a cartoon in the shop. I need an umbrella, you know, the one that you open like
that this. Opens up, helps you from the rain, yes.
So those were the kind of experiences. At the time, of course, very frustrating because I was not able to get through. But now when I look back, it just, the hard way or the soft way, it took away the hesitation of asking for help.
So that was the first experience, right? When you were building, it was not the only one I know in your case. So before I will ask you a few questions, actually, how do we build from zero or something? I just want to hear, what was the next one?
The next one was back in India. It was a few startups. So I was a management consultant before working for PricewaterhouseCoopers. So, and the whole startup ecosystem was just booming in India. We had the best and biggest of e-commerce companies being made. You wouldn't imagine the kind of access to products and services it created in the country. So that was the first stint that I had in startups. And I went from being a management consultant to getting into startups in an operating business, trying to build the logistics for an e-commerce company. So when we order everything from picking up from a warehouse to delivering it to our houses, the whole transportation of it was what I was working on. So it was a new business again that we built from scratch. That was the second experience. It was a close next that followed with another startup. So it was an EV company called Ola, and they started building three-wheelers. And I was one of the first few employees in that outfit. We turned the ICE vehicles, the smoke-emitting tuk-tuks upside down in the garage of the office, in the parking area, a parking lot of the office, and you're trying to figure out what's the best place to put a battery in, right? And just the amusement of people, without any gear, trying to figure out, tear things apart and understand how do we make this whole machine so beautiful and electric now, was the next big 0 to 1, and an amazing experience at that. The company doesn't sell tuk-tuks anymore. It does two-wheelers, bikes, and they've done beautifully well for themselves. But it was the second big 0 to 1.
When you think about, right, so here you're sharing a story, you come pretty much in a company, in a corporate company, and you build like within that a particular division, something that also as a woman, and often as a woman in a different country, in terms of different culture. So what do you still would be maybe like 3 tips that, or like 3 strengths that really helped you to do that when you reflect back?
I think the first one is courage, and not in the sense that we don't fear something or we are not worried about something, but the courage to do it anyway. Do it anyway, irrespective of your inhibitions, and taking a leap of faith on a particular idea or a particular story that you want to see come alive. So that courage is the first thing that you need to build. I think most of what we need to be a good builder is a skill. And it's not something we are born with, or maybe some are, but most of it can be built. And courage is the first thing. The second thing is to not take yourself too seriously, because there will be so many failures, so many times and moments where you would question, was it all worth it? It's just not working. What are we really doing? It's futile, or it's not progressing, or where is it going to end up? Almost always when we start building something new, we know it's not where we'll end up, right? So not taking yourself seriously, being okay with failure, and just taking a bad day and knowing that you need to show up the next one. And the last one is something that I'm building consciously now, having realized it over the years, is resilience. Resilience in your own ability to deal with things. And that's a lot to do with mental strength and mental health. But it's resilience in every way, in terms of your physical health, in terms of your mental health. Because if you can't bring the best of you, then it's a very rare outcome that you'll build something amazing that you're proud of. So that needs work.
Absolutely. You know, just recently I have been speaking with students in Singapore. It was at Yale in US campus. They had some series about women in leadership, and they asked me to come and speak with them, and then we kept in touch with a few. And when I talked to them, they're about to graduate, many girls usually, and they're all very scared to go into the adult world. You need to find a job, and you have to get paid and figure out what to do. And so you were sharing a story of you being alone, relatively young still at that time. And so here you are, go to a foreign country. What would you say to yourself at that time, perhaps, that could have made it a bit easier, the whole experience?
Have faith, and again, comes back to the second thing I said about 0 to 1s, is not to take yourself too seriously. Things have a way of working themselves out. So not to worry too much, and take those leaps of faith, which I ended up doing, but with less worry, with a little bit more faith, I would say. And to look at stories which are still in making. I think often we look at stories which are done. Right?
I love that.
It's amazing. Everything in hindsight is a hero story, or a heroine story. But to look at people and stories that are still in making, so you see the struggle, you see the bad days as much as you see the good days. So that's what I would tell myself.
When you look back again at that particular time, and also all other times, because for you, you're like a serial builder in different aspects of your profession, what do you feel helps you to be successful at that?
I think a couple of things. One, which I only realized as I grew up, and now that I'm realizing what building is, I've put a name to that whole process, is a big privilege I had with my parents. So both of them, very unassumingly, without even realizing, were builders in their own right. So my father, an engineer himself, he moved from the south of India to north of India without knowing the language. Just with a bag full of clothes, and got into a train, right? And did not know how he would manage. And he did that multiple times over with us. He built a whole life for us in a new city, and he went through his ups and downs with work, but never once did we see him lose his resilience. So I think they had that innate quality. And so was my mom, very different from my dad, but in a very different way. So a botanist who went on to learn computer science and started teaching computer science to high school students. It was an absolutely new area, but she did it with 2 young kids, a traveling husband. So both of them had this ability that they had inculcated, that it's okay if you don't know what's going on, you can figure it out. So just start, right? So that, I think, is the biggest thing that helped me build that resilience over time.
I also know that you have been a few times in the situations when you were the only woman or one of the very few women in the room professionally. What can you tell me about that?
Sure. So one of the few women in the room has happened to me quite a few times. In startups, I was amongst the few women at Ola, for example, Ola Electric, when we were building the EV. And one day, my boss comes and says, Kasturi, you realize you're the senior most woman in the room. And I just looked around me and I was like, really? I'm the senior most? Doesn't seem like I should be the senior most. But that was because we had few women.
Very few women.
Very few women. But it was still nice. And now from there, it's a place where they've built a whole factory of EVs.
What helped you to actually stay grounded and confident, surrounded by a larger number of men at work?
One is I found people who were, for the lack of a better word, allies in that sense, men or women, the few that were around me, who would not care whether I was a woman or a man in the workplace, right? So I naturally graduated toward mentors and people who did not have that bias in their heads and were really about building something amazing. So I drew energy from people like that, and I think it's very important, be it any sort of minority that you're in a situation, whether it be because of gender or any other aspect. So that was what I did consciously. I did not always find them so easily, but I tried to find them very selfishly for my own self. And the second thing was to not think too much about it, right? So I didn't realize I was the senior most woman in the room because I didn't think about how many women were there in the room in the first place. We should know it, but it should not define us.
Thank you so much. And that was Kasturi on YanaTV, where we talked about building from zero while also often being one of the very few women in the room, and what it means, how you can do this, especially if you are just graduating and coming into the workplace and trying to figure out what it is that you're meant to do here in the world. Connect with us, share in the comments, share with friends, and I'm going to see you next time. You shoot the bird, don't shoot the bird, just scare the bird. Shoot the bird. I'm like, don't shoot the bird.